to secure a Brexit deal with the EU and to get it through Parliament. For the last fortnight, we've been filming with her behind the scenes.
Morning, Nick.
Morning, Prime Minister. Thank you for the lift.
She's under pressure from her own party to stand up to Brussels.
A lot of people I talk to, Prime Minister, say that Chequers represents a compromise and it's not the Brexit that people voted for.
You know what some people say? They rather liked it when you joked about being that bloody difficult woman. They like that. And they sometimes say, where's she gone?
Well, she's still there. But I think there's a difference between those who think you can only be bloody difficult in public and those of us who think, actually, you bide your time and you're bloody difficult when the time is right and when it really matters.
The EU says she's still not offering a deal they can accept.
Hello, Jean-Claude. Hello.
No deal is now a real possibility.
The next few weeks are going to be really important. We're reaching that critical stage.
Tonight, the Prime Minister, at work, at home, at stake, her future and yours. For years, it was just the name of the Prime Minister's country retreat in this beautiful corner of Buckinghamshire. It is now, though, the name of a plan which has provoked a bitter battle in the Conservative Party, with consequences for us all. It is Chequers. This is the place where Prime Ministers traditionally come to rest and relax, given to the nation as a house of peace, a place to escape the noise and the clamour of Westminster. But one hot day in July, it was the scene of a political drama, a drama that could shape all of our futures. The Cabinet met to hammer out what the country, what the EU, had waited 2 long years for, a plan for Brexit. It was in this room, it was around this table, that the Prime Minister haggled with the Cabinet to back her Brexit plan. Forevermore, it will be known as the Chequers Plan. It's a plan Theresa May is now desperate to sell.
What I'm doing as Prime Minister, what we're doing as a government, and what we did here at Chequers in putting the plan together, is put a plan together that delivers on the vote that people took, because it means an end to free movement, an end to jurisdiction of the court, an end to sending vast sums of money every year, and all the other things like coming out of the fisheries policy, the agricultural policy, and so forth. But at the same time, we're able to protect jobs and livelihoods.
But first, Theresa May's cabinet and then her party have been split by the Chequers Plan. It's complicated, it's long, but at its heart a simple aim: to make sure that the new borders that will spring up between Brexit Britain and the EU don't destroy thousands of manufacturing jobs and don't undermine peace in Northern Ireland. It was a compromise with the EU. For many, a compromise too far.
We had blinked first, and I think Chequers was a sign we'd blinked first.
Blinked how?
Because we conceded that we would stay under EU rules, not just today, not just today's rules, but changes of rules in the future.
To avoid new post-Brexit border checks, Theresa May proposed a common rulebook with the EU, sticking to the same regulations and standards for trading goods and food. Many round the table thought that common sense. Many, not all.
We are going to let somebody else set the rules for companies in which we are the best? That's not common sense at all. And it's even worse than common sense, because how will they decide those rules? What mechanism will they use? Well, you know, we won't be there to influence it. We can't be rule takers. That's not democratic in any way. That's worse than where we are now, not better.
David Davis said, "You blinked in the face of EU intransigence." Boris Johnson said you'd waved the white flag. Are they wrong to say you budged because the EU wouldn't give you what you wanted?
It's unblocked the negotiations, and crucially, it has done that. But it was a plan that I believe is absolutely right for the United Kingdom.
You know what people say, and they say it actually if they're Remainers as well as leavers. They say half in, half out, 1 foot in, 1 foot out, worst of both worlds. What's your answer to that?
Well, look, there are some people who say to me, basically, we want to carry on the relationship with the EU that we've always had. Effectively, we want to stay in the EU. There are other people who say we want to be as distant as possible from the European Union. But actually, what's in the UK's interest, what's in our interests, is to continue to have good cooperation with the European Union on things like security. It's to continue to have good opportunity for trade with the European Union and to make sure that businesses that are trading with the EU today don't see any change.
That promise of no change is what made the Chequers plan so divisive. First, her Brexit secretary David Davis quit. Then Boris Johnson, her foreign secretary, decided he would follow suit. Over the summer, Johnson's criticism of the Prime Minister's plan became more and more strident, raising questions about his ambition and her leadership.
Of course her future is at risk because she's got Boris Johnson now breathing down her neck. And I think the thing for which Theresa really has a problem with is that she's almost in a position now where she's pretty much pickled off everybody.
What you've got is a Prime Minister who's got a disunited, warring bunch behind her, so she can't take a rational step. She's got to take a step that satisfies her party, because if she was rational, she would go further than Chequers to bridge the gap between her and the EU. But she can't do that. Why? Because her own party won't let her do it.
Good morning, this is Today with Martha Carney and Justin Webb.
The headlines this morning: about 50 Conservative MPs discuss ways of forcing a leadership election to remove Theresa May from Downing Street last night. As the government unveils its
Last Wednesday, just hours after the news broke of a plot to topple the Prime Minister.
Questions to the Prime Minister.
In her Commons office, they've been preparing for Prime Minister's questions, cutting, pasting and highlighting her file of what they hope are killer facts and killer answers.
The government's Brexit negotiations are an abject failure. I can see that by the sullen faces behind her.
Theresa May's Chief of Staff, Gavin Barwell, is watching how his boss performs. No Tory MP yet dares say in public what's being said in private, that it's time for her to go.
Not a single Brexiteer question. Are you surprised? We've got talk of coup on the front page of the Telegraph.
So we
nothing.
had to ask other people about that, but I would guess there was a conscious decision not to raise it.
There soon follows a sign of the scale of what Theresa May is up against. Tory MPs with doubts about Chequers are invited to share them with their leader. Watching and listening, her enforcer, the Chief Whip, who needs their votes.
A lot of people I talk to, Prime Minister, say that Chequers represents a compromise and it's not the Brexit that people voted for.
I think the other thing we get all the time, Prime Minister, is from our members is why is the Cabinet so split on this? Why are people resigning?
Yes,
That's hard
and
for
I
us as
recognise
MPs.
it's hard for you as MPs when you see that. Obviously, we did see in July, a deal was agreed, and then a couple of days later, obviously, we saw 2 resignations from the Cabinet. But I think what is important now is that the activity has really stepped up in the last few months, and of course will continue through to the point at which we've got the agreement. Obviously, we're working to an agreement this autumn.
But if you could have no travel plans, November, December, I'd really appreciate it.
What happens here on the Northern Irish border could derail Theresa May's plan. After Brexit, this would be the only land border between the UK and the EU. Britain has guaranteed it will stay an invisible border with no checks, and this is why. 30 years ago it looked like this, and was so dangerous the army could only fly in by helicopter. Brexiteers fear that this guarantee is being used by Brussels to force Britain to stay signed up to EU rules forever. Boris Johnson says this plan that you've agreed to on Ireland, it's a suicide belt around the British Constitution.
I I have to say, I think that choice of language was completely inappropriate. I've been Home Secretary, was Home Secretary for 6 years and as Prime Minister for 2 years now. I think using language like that was not right, and it's not language I would have used. But it's important that we deliver for the people of Northern Ireland. They don't want a hard border between Northern Ireland and Ireland. The only proposal that's been put forward that delivers on them not having that hard border and ensures that we don't carve up the United Kingdom is the Chequers plan.
But Brexiteers like Jacob Rees-Mogg don't agree. He says the Chequers plan, with its shared rules and customs arrangements, means that Brexit does not mean Brexit.
What we're going to be doing today is putting forward ideas to solve the difficulty on the Irish border.
Last week he unveiled an alternative plan for the border. The Prime Minister argues that one of the main arguments for the Chequers plan is it is the only way to guarantee that there will not be a hard border in Ireland.
This is simply not true. You don't have to have a physical border infrastructure in Ireland, and you can maintain the integrity of the single market by having checks away from the border. There is already a border in Northern Ireland for excise, for VAT, for currency and for immigration. So you're simply carrying on with what you've already got, but doing it remotely from the border. And remote border checks happen across the world.
Theresa May says a remote border, checked several miles away, is no alternative at all.
You don't solve the issue of no hard border by having a hard border 20 kilometres inside Northern Ireland or 20 kilometres inside Ireland. Still a hard border.
It's no use selling her Chequers plan at home if it's rejected abroad by the leaders of the EU.
Thanks everybody for coming together today. Obviously there's been quite a lot of work that's been going on over the summer with the negotiations in Brussels. We hope
This is Britain's Brexit top team meeting to prepare for this week's crucial EU summit.
the next few weeks are going to be really important. We're reaching that critical stage.
The key players, the new Brexit Secretary Dominic Raab and Chief EU Advisor Ollie Robbins.
Yeah, I mean, they've been completely clear, Prime Minister, that the White Paper was a game changer there. There's a real sense over the summer that the argument you've been making for some time, that the rest of Europe's agenda does have a bearing on Brexit and vice versa, is beginning to get some traction.
But as Dominic Raab heads to Brussels for the next round of Brexit negotiations, he's got a problem. EU chief negotiator Michel Barnier has publicly rubbished key parts of the Chequers plan, and now there are reports that he said it's dead.
Now you're trying to sell this Chequers plan. He says it's dead. I don't really have time for all that media drama. I'm focused on the negotiation, and we're making a lot more progress than the sort of media schools would have you believe.
Dominic Raab has promised to step up the pace of negotiations, ticking off problems one at a time. There are just weeks left to strike a deal.
It's good to be back.
Listen to the noises emanating from this town, and you might imagine Theresa May's Brexit plan is already dead. But in Brussels, they know if they kill off Theresa May's plan, they might kill off her premiership. And that could mean more delay, more uncertainty, and maybe even no deal at all. To avoid that, they might be tempted to offer what they're rather good at manufacturing here: a fudge. But a fudge won't satisfy Tory critics of Theresa May. In number 10, she's waiting for a call from the President of the European Commission, Jean-Claude Juncker.
But I think one of the things I need to talk to him about is, you know, the level of detail in the future relationship that we're talking about, because there's just one or two things appearing to suggest they want it very high level. And of course, we need the detail for Parliament and the public.
Yeah, I mean, they need to understand the parliamentary process you've got to go through and what you need in order to be able to get the detail in Parliament. I think that's the key thing to learn.
In other words, she's worried the EU might try and put the crucial detail she needs on hold.
Thank you. Hello, Jean-Claude. Hello. I'm very well, thank you. I hope you managed to have a good summer break.
Juncker is about to make a big speech. Number 10 hope he'll make positive noises about their Chequers plan.
Ah. Of course, yes, yes. And I realise it's been a busy period for you in the lead up to that speech.
The pressure Theresa May is facing doesn't just come from Europe or members of her own party. She's on her way to Birmingham for a summit of car manufacturers who are warning that if she gets Brexit wrong, it'll cost jobs and investment. This at a time when she needs all the friends she can get. Britain exports more than 1.3 million cars a year. The industry employs more than 850,000 people. It's based on just-in-time supply chains, with vehicles and components crisscrossing Europe with no border checks and no delays.
We are making our cars just in time. That means that at the plant we just have 4 hours of parts. We have to continue to receive those parts in sequence and on time, or we can't make cars.
His fear that delays at the border after Brexit would come at a price.
I think jobs would go if the cost of our costs go up and then that cost is passed on to the consumer.
Theresa May says her Chequers plan, which agrees to shared rules on goods within the EU, addresses those concerns.
What we can get with this is continuing a good trade with the EU, which means it does protect jobs here in the UK, and that matters to people. You know, if you're a car worker somewhere, in Sunderland or the West Midlands, it matters to you whether that business is going to continue here in the UK.
But at this summit, the boss of Jaguar Land Rover has a brutal message for her. Time is running out.
Brexit is due to happen on the 29th of March next year. Currently, I do not even know if any of our manufacturing facilities in the UK will be able to function on the 30th.
Thursday morning in Downing Street, and the Cabinet are about to meet. Amongst them, the Chancellor Philip Hammond, a Brexit sceptic. And there are some true believers.
You were one of the faces of leave. Why are you in here making Chequers work when out there are all the people you campaigned with who thought it was a terrible idea?
Well, not at all. I think the striking thing is, of course, there are some people who are concerned about the government's proposition who don't necessarily agree with every aspect of our negotiation. My view is...
They think it's a sellout. They think you're in here selling out Brexit and all those people who voted for leave.
No one's ever used that language to me. Now, of course, we need to make sure that we get the best possible deal. And, of course, any deal, any negotiation involves compromise. Is it going to be my perfect vision of Brexit? No, but you must never make the perfect the enemy of the good.
This is no ordinary cabinet. It's been called to examine how ready they are if no deal can be reached. Inside the room, sealed envelopes with secret government papers on what might happen.
I'm going to invite some reactions around the room. I'll invite Dominic to react, and then I think they will be exiting.
A smooth exit.
A smooth exit. Thank you, Environment Secretary.
After the cameras left, the Governor of the Bank of England, Mark Carney, was smuggled into the Cabinet meeting via a back door. He told them how the bank was preparing for a no-deal Brexit, including one worst-case scenario, with house prices crashing and a massive financial shock. So sensitive are the plans, an official asked for the papers back at the end of the meeting.
Sorry, can I just check everything, so many papers from the table? No, I've left 2 sets, I've left. Brilliant, thank you. Section stay, can I just check you haven't got any papers? Yeah, they're all there. Thank you so much, thank you.
I wonder how you felt when you heard the Governor of the Bank of England say that house prices might drop by 1/3.
We're working for a good deal. I believe we can get a good deal. But actually, we're still not at the end of the negotiations, so we need to prepare for all eventualities. And so a no deal is one of those eventualities.
How
We
did you
need to
feel?
prepare.
There's the Governor of the Bank of England, a man you've just agreed to reappoint. And he's saying to the Cabinet of the United Kingdom, not because of a war, not because of a natural disaster, because of a political choice. House prices might slump by 1/3, thousands of jobs might be lost, you might be stockpiling medicines and food.
It's right to prepare for no deal. So the British people have the confidence of knowing that if we're in that position, we have done everything we need to do.
Forgive me, Prime Minister, this is not some think tanker. This is not some newspaper commentator. This is the Governor of the Bank of England. And he's telling the Cabinet that you're dancing with disaster.
All the forecasts that are out there, they're not predictions, they're actually saying what's important is how the government responds. Let's be clear about this. Under no deal, there would be some short-term disruption. It's our job as a government to make sure that we make a success of no deal, just as we make a success of getting a good deal.
I think no deal would be catastrophic, and people are far too casual about it. If no deal means we haven't agreed anything, then it means we've got no agreement about the Northern Ireland border, no agreement on citizens, no agreement on aviation, on national security. It's not viable. It's rhetoric, not reality, and it can't be allowed to happen.
The negotiations are heading into a final, crucial phase. The Prime Minister's Tory critics fear that in a bid to avoid a no-deal Brexit, she'll make more concessions.
And when you get to the end of a negotiation, there's always a temptation just to give that last little thing to get over the line.
She's blinked once, in your view, and you're worried she could blink again.
I'm worried that the government in total, it's not just the Prime Minister, it's the whole system, might blink again.
Getting a deal will inevitably involve more compromise, won't it?
We're in a negotiation, Nick. We're going to be sitting down, we're going to be looking at this plan. I've been very clear those issues on which are absolutely non-negotiable. So an end to free movement, non-negotiable. An end to the jurisdiction of the European Court of Justice, non-negotiable. An end to sending vast amounts of money to the European Union every year, non-negotiable.
Isn't it time to say to the British people, to your party, that's how plans work, that's how negotiations work. You give a bit, you take a bit. You negotiate, you compromise.
Well, negotiation, by definition, is about two sides sitting together, looking at proposals and coming to an agreement on what proposal they're going to put forward at the end of the day.
If Theresa May does reach a deal with the EU, it'll have to come back to the Commons for what's called a meaningful vote. Tory rebels warn she must chuck Chequers now or risk a humiliating defeat.
This is the sort of Dirty Harry option, isn't it? It's come on punk, make my day. How many shots have been fired? If you make the wrong choice, the consequences can be unpleasant.
They'd be unwise to test support for the Chequers plan.
They'd be foolish because Chequers would find it had very little support.
Jacob Rees-Mogg says that if you put it to the vote, that's your Dirty Harry moment. Come on, punk, make my day, he says.
This is, look, every member of Parliament, when it comes to that vote, I'm sure will recognise the significance of that vote. Do we really think that if the European Union, we've been through this negotiation, we get to the point where we've agreed a deal, that if Parliament was to say no, go back and get a better one, do you really think the European Union is going to give a better deal at that point?
I want to be clear whether you are saying, I think you are, my deal or no deal.
I think that the alternative to that will be not having a deal, because I don't think there will be I don't think the negotiations would have that deal, and B, we're leaving on the 29th of March 2019.
That is how Theresa May wants to present the choice. But if she's defeated in the Commons, it won't be her deciding, and calls for a second referendum will grow.
At that stage, things are going to be chaotic. It will be a constitutional crisis. If the deal doesn't carry, if she doesn't actually have the confidence of Parliament, or she can't even reach an agreement, we will be staring at no deal. That can't be allowed to happen. In those circumstances, all options should be on the table. And one of those has to be an ability to put a question back to the electorate.
Friday night at Chequers.
There you go.
Theresa May and her husband Philip are watching a quiz show.
Seems rather menacing, doesn't it, somehow?
I think that's the idea. It's to put pressure on the
put pressure on
contestant.
I don't know what time it is, but hopefully a cup of tea will be a good restorative. Oh, I know this one.
You know that
I know this one. Saturnine, gloomy. Sure, it's gloomy. I wouldn't say either. Any of those are quite right, actually, but gloomy.
I've heard the word, but that's not helped me. Really?
They've got some very nice chrysanthemums, aren't they?
They're not chrysanthemums.
Why?
They're
Dahlias. Why do I keep getting this wrong?
You keep calling dahlias chrysanthemums.
Dahlias. They're very nice dahlias.
It is a brief moment of calm before this week's EU summit and what's set to be a turbulent Tory conference. You told your party that you'd only serve as long as they wanted you to. Can you reassure people in your party that you're not determined to go on and on and on? You'll listen.
This is where I get a little bit irritated. This debate is not about my future. This debate is about the future of the people of the UK and the future of the United Kingdom. That's what I'm focused on, and that's what I think we should all be focused on. It's ensuring that we get that good deal from the European Union, which is good for people in the UK, wherever they live in the UK. That's what's important for us, and that's what I'm focusing on. It's the future of people in the UK that matters.
That future hinges on decisions made in the next few weeks. Theresa May believes there's a chance, a real chance, of doing a deal with the EU. Her greatest fear is that Parliament might reject it. What might follow is anybody's guess. No deal, a general election, another referendum. All bets are off. Stand by for a political drama, the likes of which you've never seen.
All this week, with just 6 months to go, BBC News reports from across the country finding out what Brexit means to you. But next on BBC One, she didn't make it to a doctor's appointment. Well, CCTV helped to track Jean down. A 77-year-old is reported missing.